was designed by Turkish architect Vedat Daloke to be shaped like a desert Bedouin's tent. It is situated at the north end of Faisal Avenue, putting it at the northernmost end of the city and the foot of the Margala Hills, the westernmost foothills of the Himalayas. It is located on an elevated area of land against a picturesque backdrop of the Margala Hills. This enviable location represents the mosque's great importance and allows it to be seen from miles around, day and night. The Faisal Mosque is conceived as the national mosque of Pakistan and is named after the late King Faisal bin Abdulaziz of Saudi Arabia, who supported and financed the project. It is the largest mosque in South Asia and one of the largest mosques in the world. The Faisal Mosque was the largest mosque in the world from 1986 until 1993, when it was overtaken in size upon the completion of the Hassan II Mosque in Casablanca, Morocco. Subsequent expansions of the Masjid al-Haram, the Grand Mosque of Mecca, and the Masjid al-Nabi, the Prophet's Mosque in Medina, Saudi Arabia during the 1990s, relegated Faisal Mosque to 4th place in terms of size. Architectural wonders of Pakistan.
Good evening, Assalamu alaikum. You're watching PTV World. I'm Fahim Bangush for the headline news for this hour. Prime Minister Imran Khan inaugurates Ehsaas Kafalat program in South Waziristan. Says the government will ensure social safety of 25% people of South Waziristan this year. The Prime Minister assures to uplift the poor segments of society in backward areas, including the tribal districts. He was addressing the check distribution ceremony among the tribal people and the Kamyab Jawan program in Bana. Pakistan successfully test-fired surface-to-surface Shaheen-3 missile capable of hitting the target up to 2,750 kilometers. President Dr. Arif Alvi and Prime Minister Imran Khan congratulate over the successful test. Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi says Pakistan desires to engage with new US administration for enhancement of bilateral relations. Expresses hope that Biden administration will play a role in stopping Indian oppression against unarmed Kashmiris. Joe Biden is to be sworn in today as the 46th President of the US amid a heavy security presence in Washington, D.C. in recent history. That's all for now. For further details and live streaming, do log on to our website world.btv.com.pk. You can find us on our Facebook page for the name of BTV World and follow us on Twitter at WorldBTV. Stay tuned to BTV World.
High in the western Himalayas, cradled in the Karakoram mountains of northern Pakistan, lies a plateau known as the Land of Giants. The Deosai Plateau in Gilgit-Baltistan is the second highest plateau in the world. The Deosai National Park was created here in 1993, and it is home to the endangered Himalayan brown bear. This is the sole habitat in the whole of South Asia that can claim an increasing bear population. Initially a sanctuary for the bears, recent infrastructure development in the national park has begun to threaten their home. The construction of roads and bridges is allowing for easier access across the plateau. In 2013, there were 28 human occupations in the park. 15 of these belong to the Gujars, nomadic herders from the lowlands of Punjab. But tourists also came up to enjoy summer in the park and set up camps here. In recent years, the Gilgit-Baltistan authorities have been persuaded that such development is beneficial, with little regard for the needs of the wildlife and fragile ecosystem. But the development is highly detrimental to the habitat and wildlife, which can only thrive when there's very little human activity. Once the precedent for building within the park is established, it is hard to stop. the needs of the park and its creatures could soon be completely overwhelmed as development marches on. With improved roads and bridges, so the access for tourists has improved. Visitors to the Deosai number in the hundreds and are increasing every year. Most of the tourists coming to the park, especially from the nearby areas, have very little understanding of good environmental behaviour. Some light fires in the park and leave large pools of trash, most of it being non-biodegradable. There is no system whatsoever for dealing with all this trash which they leave behind. To restore the park to its former pristine condition, a proper system of garbage disposal will need to be put in place. The park authorities have limited finances with which to tackle all these problems. The arrangement that visitors from within the region don't need to pay to enter here does not help the situation. The Wildlife Department can't afford to employ or properly train enough staff, so there is little being done to educate visitors about correct behaviour or about conservation issues. Strengthening the park's revenue stream is essential, and charging a small fee for all visitors could provide some of the funds the Wildlife Department desperately needs. Without environmental education, the visitors, instead of acting as caretakers of this stunning piece of national heritage, often inflict harm upon it. Today, the brown bear is one of the most threatened animals in South Asia. The future of the species in Pakistan, and perhaps the region, may well depend on the stability of the Deosai National Park. It and its biodiversity must be protected so that future generations can continue to enjoy this valuable part of our natural world.
Hello and welcome to this special transmission on this very historic day. We are talking about the US inauguration day. Joseph R. Biden is going to be the president of the US. He is going to take oath in a ceremony which has started. He is going to take oath in less than 1 hour. That is not all. Today also is a historic day because America is going to see its first female vice president and second vice president of color to take oath. And color is one aspect. she also comes from this region, South Asia. So this must be for every black and brown child in the US and elsewhere, it must be a very proud moment. We are going to talk about this. We are going to talk about this inauguration and what to expect. Remember, this is far from the usual transition. One, because at this moment it seems that the US Capitol is in the state of lockdown. It resembles a garrison town right now because of what happened on January 6th. And that's not all. COVID-19 is also a big contributor to the precautions that are being taken. And today, if somebody thought that President Donald Trump, remember he still is, President Donald Trump for another 40 to 50 minutes, that he might not leave without some kind of a scene, but he did not create a scene, although in his departing remarks he didn't mention his successor. That is not all. We know that there has been dirt of ownership of what happened on January 6th. But we are going to talk about what this transition means for the US, for the region, for the world, and our region as well. In order to help us understand these issues, we have a very gifted panel in this studio. I'm joined by Dr. Zafar Nawaz Jaspal, who is an expert on foreign policy. Thank you very much, Dr. Zafar, for being part of the program. On Skype, we are joined by Athar Rimzi, Executive Director, American Pakistan Public Affairs Committee. Thank you very much, sir, for being part of the program. Sabrina Khan also joins us via Skype. She's based in the US, a political analyst. Sabrina, thank you very much for your time as well. And then we will be joined by Faz Rahman, a senior journalist, who will join us on telephone. Let me start with you, Dr. Zafar Nawaz Jaspal. Do you think that today's transition is significant, and how?
I think that this transition is significant maybe for American domestic setting.
Okay.
But if you see the American global outlook, this transition will be having a lesser impact. It is not going to bring a much change in the American foreign and strategic policy.
All right.
The same process which was started during the, you can say, Obama's time, it was continued by the President Trump, and it will continue by the newly President Joe Biden.
All right.
But there will be a difference. The difference is that at least now American foreign policy, foreign strategic policy will be institutionalized.
Okay.
Everyone can expect what will be the outcome.
By institutionalized, you mean based on institutions?
Yeah, based on. But
not other way around.
More role will be there. State Department will be in a lead. And in our region, especially in the context of Pakistan, maybe the Defense Department will be taking a lead.
Right.
In this context, if you see the newly appointed General Austin, the Defense Secretary, in his hearing to the Armed Services Committee at the Senate, he categorically said that he desires to revive relations with Pakistani armed forces. This is very important. He said armed forces.
And we are actually getting a little bit ahead of ourselves. Let me first talk about the political significance overall, and then we are going to talk about Pakistan-US relations as well. Sabrina Khan, tell me, how do you see this transition? It is far from a usual transition, but it is very significant as well, historic even. What do you think it means for America and South Asian community?
The past 4 years, we saw a dramatic shift in American politics and a dramatic shift in how the presidency was viewed and looked at and how policies were implemented. And I think that's what makes this specific transition so unique. And this, I think what makes it unique is the circumstances that we're going into and what circumstances that we're coming out of. I mean, me personally, I'm 24 years old. I live in Washington, D.C., and I, have seen what has been going on with our country firsthand. And I've seen what happened to our country earlier this month, and I've never seen anything like it, especially someone who's always been so involved in public service. So I think that first and foremost, this is a day of triumph for our country. I think this is a day of change and moving on for us. And I think that, you know, we will be seeing a lot of change in the next 4 years, and it's not going to come easy. I know another guest mentioned multilateralism. That is going to be something that exists. We're going to be utilizing our institutions more. The world institutions that were supposed to be our beacon that we withdrew from, we will be re-entering. And so many issues like climate change, coronavirus response. There are so many changes that are going to come. They won't come easy, but you know, we're excited to see them.
Since you started by mentioning or bringing up January 6th, a big question, because you're talking about the future and you're saying that a lot of changes are going to come. Let me ask you one question about the race relations, so to speak. It is perceived at this moment that there is a lot of discord in the US, and the kind of tensions that we have seen emanating and actually leading up to January 6th might create some problems in coming days as well. Do you think that that is going to be a problem in coming days?
Yes, I absolutely do, and I think that kind of stems from the personalities of those that are rioting and, you know, actually really, for lack of a better term, inflicting terrorism on our country. Because those people have now become entitled. They have, because of the Trump presidency, because of the way that Trump lived out his presidency and, you know, put these thoughts in these people's heads, they think that this is okay. They think racism is okay. They think that this is what the beacon is for America, even though that is not what it is. You know, this is not what the American dream is about. This is not what America is about. But these people have not been brainwashed, but basically they had this feeling inside of them that they were holding in for a very long time that Trump brought out in them. And now we're seeing mass protests, mass attacks on our democracy, and that is because of something that already existed but was very underlying because it frankly was inappropriate to show that side of people. But now that they're showing it, yes, they will continue to fight for something that is, I mean, obviously wrong. I mean, Joe Biden legally won the election. But that doesn't mean that they're still not going to stop fighting. They definitely will, and they will wreak a lot of havoc. And DC is prepared for that. There's thousands of troops employed right now in DC to protect our nation's capital and the people that are there. And that is definitely going to continue.
And that is today. We still have to wait and see what becomes just tomorrow, day after tomorrow, and next 4 years. Let me bring in Athar Tiramzi. Athar Tiramzi, what does it mean for you, this transition? And what does it mean for Pakistani American community?
I think transition is very historic in a sense that we are fighting multiple fronts on so many issues in the United States and around the world, coronavirus being number one. And, you know, I think how it was handled in the United States, where it was no centralized plan to really tackle the issue, and it was given up to states to say, hey, listen, you fight however you want to fight it. I think that really caused havoc, and 400,000 deaths in the nation that is the leader of the free world is a disgrace and very unfortunate. So today's transition hopefully marks the mindset change that we are hoping, where healthcare and the expert is regarded as the experts and not the outsiders or not the others. But the challenge remains because we have 75 million people who did vote for Donald Trump. So whether Donald Trump is the president or not, that remains irrelevant because those 75 million people are still here. They will be here in 2 years from now when the midterm elections are coming. They will still be here in 2024 when the next presidential election is coming. So I think the transition is happening, but my hope really is for the nation to come together and be united and lower the temperature and set a different tone.
Right. And regarding Pakistani U.S. community?
I think Pakistani American community played a very significant role. So I was appointed by Biden administration as the national director for Pakistanis for Biden National Council, which was the first council that was actually formed and created by the campaign to engage Pakistani Americans. And the council itself had operations in about 18 different states. We had about 2,300 different volunteers. And we saw Pakistani Americans on all different levels. I'm talking about from your local all the way to national, and I think many more people came out vote, many more people were engaged. But I think as Pakistani Americans, we realize the value of our community in this election. That if you don't say nothing, you will never be part of the equation. And I think last year proved that we are important and part of the equation. So I'm very excited, but the work has just begun. So we have to roll up our sleeves and now get to work.
Absolutely, Atat Tirmzi, we have to look forward to that. Let me bring in Fazur Rahman as well. I introduced him earlier. He is based in Washington, D.C., senior journalist, has worked for many important outlets. Fazur Rahman, sir, thank you very much, sir, for being part of the program.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Farrukh. It's good to be with you on your show.
Right. My opening question to everyone in this panel is, what does this transition mean to them and to the U.S. and then the world?
Okay, I mean, that's a great question and an overarching one, actually. So I would just give you my perspective. I think personally, it's been a roller coaster ride for us, for our community, and not just as Pakistani Americans, just as Americans, period. What you experienced for the last 4 years, and thank God that's over. So much uncertainty, so much unpredictability, and a guy who was there who could just do anything the next moment. So that chapter is almost closed. We still have a few minutes to go, actually. To be precise, about 39 minutes.
39 minutes. In his exactly. I was looking at the
exactly 39 minutes, and he's again for the next 39 minutes he will be president. He's probably enjoying a motorcade in Florida right now from the airport to his the residence, personal residence. And for the Americans, for America as a whole, I think it's a welcome change. Your previous speaker, previous guest, Mr. Tirmidhi, made a good point. Yes, he left. Yes, it's a big change. Yes, it's a transfer of power. But America always prided itself on being a country, on being a democracy with the peaceful, quote unquote, peaceful transfer of power every 4 years, if not every 4 years, every 8 years, if the president is reelected. But this time around, yes, I do see a transfer of power, but I don't see it was a peaceful transfer of power. The scenes that you see here in the Capitol, in the streets of Washington, are just unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Absolutely they are. And let me also, since we are carrying the live images from Washington, D.C., let me remind the viewers that the ceremony has started. And at this moment, the person who is speaking is Senator Amy Klobuchar, the woman who came very close to becoming Joseph Biden's vice president nominee, but that didn't happen. Once again, regarding the environment of strife, do you think that President Joseph Biden will be able to reach out across the aisle and reach out to the voters, 75 million voters who voted for Donald Trump?
Yeah, so I was basically I was getting there. Mr. Tirmidhi made a good point that 75 million votes, more than almost over 10 million more votes than what he got in 2016. So from his perspective, he didn't. That's why he kept on saying that he didn't lose, he won. So yes, 75 million voters, but I know a lot of them here in this region, actually, in the DC area, Maryland, Virginia. A lot of Pakistanis and Muslims also voted for him. And they had their own reasons. Some were catchy reasons. For example, just because Kamala Harris had an Indian heritage, they thought, it wasn't a good idea for them to vote. That was, in my opinion, was a patchy reason. But some of them saw their pockets first, their bank account. They thought they were better off under a Republican, under a Trump administration, because he gave them good tax cuts.
There are many elements that might have contributed, right, sir? I'm going to come back to you. Do stay with us. Let me go back to Dr. Zafar Nawaz Jaspal. Dr. Sahab, one argument that we have been listening to, especially coming from the Indian media, is about America's leadership, right? That America has been pushing for democracy for quite some time around the globe. But given what America has gone through recently on January 6th, they say that America has forfeited its right to be that leader. Do you honestly think that is the case?
I think that within the United States, their democratic system was so strong that they survived.
Right.
And I think it is a big stigma on the Americans' democracy. If you see today, 25,000 troops are guarding this ceremony. Yeah. And at the same time, there are reports that they have been checking that whether maybe insiders they are not trusting those guards as well.
Yeah, they replaced two national guards.
But besides that, if the Indians are saying that their democracy has been devalued or something, they have to think about themselves, because in India it was more ideologically radicalized kind of a democracy today. And in this context, Indians cannot
in America, all institutions stuck up for democracy.
Yes.
And in India, everyone has surrendered to Narendra Modi's worldview.
In the India, you find that there is a personality worship today. There is an ideological or a strong undemocratic kind of a thing. But in case of United States, it's not a personality. It's you can say democratic norms, values. Many analysts have been writing internationally that with the election, with the success of the Biden, what they said first, the values which were for 4 years on the leave, they have returned. So they are expecting, and Indians are very much disturbed from this election, because in his election campaign, he referred human rights violation in Kashmir. Now we have to wait and see whether the Biden will give a preference to his strategic objectives over the values which he was projecting during the election campaign, or the way the Democrats talks about them. Second is that Indians are also feeling a little bit agitated, because the Biden's, you can say, his policy, his team, they gave the impression that they are going to engage with China. If they are going to engage with China at this level, definitely Pakistan's role cannot be ignored. And if you see whether they are going for a back channel diplomacy.
I'm a little bit taken aback by your comment that Indians are agitated by Biden win. The question is, this is for the first time that a South Asian American of Indian descent is going to become Vice President of the U.S. Despite that, Indian elite have become narrow-minded.
The Vice President, elected Vice President in the United States, which you are referring, Indian origin, but you know that she's more, you can say, driven by her commitment to the values, democratic values. And she cannot ignore that. It's not a Trump that he make individualistic kind of an approach. So this is the one reason. The second important thing in this context is, if you see the signals are very strong to engage Pakistan.
Let me actually ask other panelists also. Sabrina Khan, your take on America's leadership around the world. Do you think that there is going to be significant change? You were talking about the executive actions that the incoming president is going to sign on day one. One is about DACA, one is about the border wall, one is about Paris Climate Change Accord. Kindly, please come in.
Yeah, of course. I mean, you listed most of the executive orders pretty well. Yes, and as you will see, obviously, when it comes to immigration, the coronavirus response, those are mostly domestic focus. But one thing to focus on, and I think it's very important, is that the coronavirus response that the Trump administration was putting out was not international collaboration. That was something that was very much focused on, barely focused domestically, whatever was going on here. But I think that with a proper coronavirus response, utilizing our international institutions, working with other countries to come up with a proper response is crucial. And I trust that the Biden administration will definitely be implementing that that, making sure that, above all, just, upholding our values and trying to help those poverty-ridden countries that are having difficulty dealing with the coronavirus response. I mean, there are so many sanctions that are put on multiple countries in which food and medical supplies can't get into the country because of the coronavirus and because of authoritarian regimes blocking that access. So there's many issues going on with that. When it comes to foreign policy, I think China is probably one of the biggest issues that the Biden administration will face. And I think that Tony Blinken, the Secretary of State, going to be Secretary of State, made it very clear that we need to go towards China through an area of strength, not weakness. And I think that is definitely something that will be helpful in regards to promoting diplomacy with China, because at the end of the day, yes, China, there's so many things going on with China, blatant human rights abuses, etc. But that doesn't mean that is not a country that we have to somehow work with in a diplomatic way. And I think that the Biden administration will definitely find a good solution for that.
Right. Atat Ramzi, same question to you. The U.S. leadership in Joseph Biden era?
Well, because, Biden already was a vice president under Obama.
Yeah.
So he has already built in relationships around the world and the exposure at the highest executive level. So I think it will be much easier to rebuild those relationships. But I think in the last 4 years, what we really have seen is a huge vacuum led by Trump's administration's sometimes knowingly, sometimes unknowingly inabilities to really take the lead. Trump kind of decided offshoot one kind of policy, whatever he wanted to do, not listening to the experts within his team. And you saw that, all of those campaign promises and all of those things that, America first and lead the world and all that was kind of just, empty promises. Yeah, it sold to a lot of people in the United States because they thought that they were left behind within their lives, and that's because somebody else's fault. And Trump kind of said that we're going to put America first. But in doing so, he only made not America first, but America only. So it was just that America was the only country that he focused on, and he didn't care. So whether it came to engaging North Korea and giving a platform to Kim Jong-un, whether it was, cutting ties with Angela Merkel in Germany, it really showed that Trump really had no handle on foreign policy. I think Joseph Biden will, take that lead back and go back to leading the world. My only worry as a Pakistani American and American is that, we cannot get into the wars, unnecessary wars around the world. Regime change.
That is a possibility this time? Tirumzi Sahab, is that a possibility?
Well, I think Americans right now, you fast forward from 2005, 2006 to 2020, we are very, very war-weary. We are tired. We have a deficit of $25 trillion. We don't want to send soldiers. And now we are really looking as Americans a national threat, which is the right-wing extremism, which wasn't there until 4 years ago. So I think Americans also do realize that we must focus back on our country when it comes to national security, when it comes to investing in infrastructure, when it comes to taking the lead in healthcare and education, which I'm glad to see that anytime Democrats have come in power, they have always heavily invested in healthcare.
Right.
And I think because of coronavirus,
that is a very important point. And we are talking about a time when there is a national and international emergency regarding coronavirus. But amazingly, while you might be right that America was and has been war-weary, we saw that the Arab Spring also in 2011 brought many forces together, and then there was a struggle and wars upon wars. Faiz Rahman Sahab, the same question to you, sir. American leadership in coming age.
I think what Trump has done, he basically successfully diminished the American role, the American exceptionalism that we have come to know was pretty much a diminished idea. that America, after all, is not an exceptional country. It's not an exception to the rule, so to speak. So you will see some, his efforts, Biden's efforts to restore that image. But we have to understand, America, regardless. I mean, I see a lot of people gloating over the fact that the invasion of the Capitol and also the barricaded DC area. Yes, of course, you see this, but at the same time, you see democracy at work. Democracy did work. People did come together. I mean, they did have their grievances. They were radicalized, yes. They were brainwashed, yes. But at the end of the day, today, most of those people, if not all those 75 million, but most of the leadership came together. You see Mitch McConnell making those statements, the majority leader in the Senate. They are there at the inauguration ceremony. So so you will see some restoration of that prestige, and America is still by far is a world leader. In the free world.
With due respect, when you were referring to McConnell's statement, were you referring to his yesterday's statement where he blamed Donald Trump fairly and squarely?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
But that came very late.
Yeah, it was too late, but not too little.
Okay.
It was absolutely, in my opinion, a little too late, but not too little. And he also said that today, that he's not going to talk to Trump ever again. So that means this is like, you see, again, as I said before, you'll see democracy at work in the Senate, in the House. People will come together. They will try to restore the order within the country. They will try to restore the prestige of the country overseas. And they will also try to push some, legislation which is in the interest of the public. Because right now, I mean, these are by far, by every respect, by every perspective, by any angle, these are the unprecedented times. Even the Senate is kind of divided 50-50. So they have to come together and work together. If they don't, then, America would be the one suffering as a result. So Mitch McConnell and his colleagues, they do realize that they have to come together. If they don't, things won't be done. So I do see.
Please go ahead, sir. Finish that thought.
Yeah. So basically, yes, on the domestic front, you see a lot of cohesion coming out of this crisis. Number one. Number two, on the international level. You asked a very good question, actually, and I want to say something about, yes, are we going to see more wars? So we had a Republican president, and Republicans, quote unquote, being pro-war. They are, they are the believers in the MIC, the MIC, military industrial complex. What Eisenhower warned us. So that president didn't start a war, but he didn't end any war either. He continued those wars, rather made them worse in some cases, in Syria, in Iraq, in Yemen.
And at places occasionally we saw that he was bragging about his nuclear button, although we are very lucky that he never pressed
and he gave a free hand to India. He looked the other way when India started all this, barbarism in the occupied Kashmir. So
that's a very good point, sir. Allow me to actually take it to the other participants as well. Dr. Zafar Nawaz Jaspal, this idea about a liberal world order on the retreat under President Trump, do you think that it is going to assert itself? The UN is going to be more important place and international norms will be more assertive? I ask you because remember that day when Balakot attack took place? At that time, it felt that there isn't any international interlocutor left to take care of these problems, that there can be a nuclear war between two nuclear capable countries. Do you think that now the liberal order is coming back? Or this is some new age?
It's a very interesting point. Let me start with the domestic. If you see that people have been comparing the situation with some people say what the Americans face during the Abraham Lincoln time when there was a racism after Civil War. Then some people are comparing it because of its economic decline with the Great Depression, that Roosevelt, how he brought the country out of it. And now we are also looking that the Americans since 1945 or 46 at least, they were the lead in, you can say, talking about institutional approach or liberal order, which you said. It's important that international liberal economic order which they pursued, and on the basis of that they tried to, you can say, guide the world, or they tried to lead the world, whatever the good word you can use for it. But at this moment we have to see that within those institutions, again, there is a big divide. And in that divide, it is difficult for Americans to assert. Because the current situation is that America is no more in the United States as we have seen in the post-Cold War or in the beginning of the 21st century. Today, the two, you can say, major countries of the national security, United Security Council, Russians and the Chinese are on the other side. And if you have to see Asia-Pacific strategy or the rebalance strategy, the Biden and his team was the part of that when they chalk out in 2011. So definitely they are going to pursue it, but with a different. But when you are talking about
you're talking about pivot to Asia, right?
Yeah.
Is Biden administration going to rejoin TPP?
TTP,
Trans-Pacific
Partnership? They try, but their main focus would be on the rebalance, because there's a big challenge for this administration. On the one side, it is going to maintain a balance within the Quad, and on the other side, how to engage and check the Chinese rise in the Asia-Pacific. Now, here is a big...
Quad is more important than TPP now.
Yeah, that is more important.
It doesn't seem to be that active.
But these are the trends which we have to not ignore. These are the major trends. And the second important thing is that though I am seeing on the sticker was that as I also pointed out, that Austin said that they are going for making some engagement with Pakistan on military, international military education and training program. But we have to not forget, in the same line he said that he's going to pressurize or encourage Pakistan to further act against those organizations which are acting against India. So they are not going to ignore India in a manner that we are expecting here. And in this context, when you are looking that if they are not going to pressurize India, then how they are looking towards the international liberal economic order. And most important thing is...
I have to stop you here right now. We see that Vice President Kamala Harris is being sworn in by Justice, a U.S. Justice, and this is going on. Wow, historic moment here. First black female Vice President has just taken oath of office. Black and South Asian, and this was very significant. 4 years ago, if you remember, we sat here talking about concession of Hillary Clinton. At that time, nobody is able to break the glass ceiling, but at least at this level, the glass ceiling has been broken, and it is quite significant a moment for the U.S. and of course for the world. We can see Vice President Pence, the outgoing Vice President, also present at the ceremony, although the U.S. President, outgoing U.S. President could not be here. He has left for Florida. Right, so back to the program. Let me go back to Sabrina Khan and ask her regarding the bad actors domestically. I mean, on one side we have seen that the outgoing president actually pardoned more than 140 people, including Steve Bannon, and Steve Bannon doesn't need any introduction. He is a leader of alt-right. On the other side, we have also seen that even this moment, at this moment also, the QAnon and similar conspiracy theories believe that somebody is going to step in and overcome the entire transition process. Do you think that in coming days these elements are just going to go away, or something will be done about them?
And I mean, I would love it if you could elaborate by what you mean by something will be done. Do you mean like more police intervention? Do you mean like within the administration?
I think you'll have to unmute your mic. Okay.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yeah, yes, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
Okay, great. So no, I would love it if you could elaborate on what you mean. What more is going to be done? Do you mean like police intervention, or within the administration? If you could just elaborate.
On one side we have seen Buglo boys, Proud Boys, QAnon. These elements are there, and they are quite visible online as well. On the other side, we have seen Steve Bannon being pardoned, and he is thought to be a bad actor. I mean, if it is a preemptive pardon, do you think that these elements are going to keep on working and keep on sowing the seeds of division in coming days? Or the incoming administration is going to do something about this division also?
Sure. I think the incoming administration is going to manage their priorities very well and what they need to focus on at this point. And I don't think that those priorities are going to include most to spite Trump. I think at this point, Trump signed a flurry of executive orders before he left office, and I think those were to make a point about his presidency, and he wanted to make sure that he was, leaving an impact. Moving forward, as I said, I think the Biden administration will focus on bigger priorities, and I also think that once the impeachment trial continues, things are going to look a little different. I mean, as of now, Nancy Pelosi has not sent the articles of impeachment to the Senate yet. However, when that does happen, I think it will look a little different, and we, in history, we really haven't seen anything like this before, so I don't know how it's going to look under a Biden administration having a previous president impeached. But we'll have to see how that goes, but I think the main focus for the Biden administration will be those priorities that they have to domestically focus on at this point.
Right. And you think that in coming days there might be further healing? Because the message so far has been one of healing. But is that possible in this environment where coronavirus is still creating a lot of trouble for people economically and physically as well?
Sure, and I think that our country has to heal in several different ways. Coronavirus being probably the first one to a lot of people, and probably being one of the biggest. But we have to heal in several ways from the damage that the Trump administration has done, and we are still healing from the attack on our nation's capital earlier this month. So I think that healing is definitely possible, and I think that is definitely something that the Biden administration is going to work towards as soon as they can, especially with the focus on the executive orders that they're planning on signing. But I think that healing will take time, and I think that working towards a stronger country will take time. But as the other speakers have said, this is a democratically elected president. This is what the people chose at this point. And granted, yes, they did choose Donald Trump the first time, but this time they chose President Biden, and they also chose the Senate to be handed over to Democrats. So I think that this is an ongoing process. It has been an ongoing process. Healing will come, but it will take some time.
Right. Atat Trivedi Saab, do you want to add to this?
Well, I think what in the leadership in the United States, what we have not seen in the last 4 years, which I think is very key to the office of the presidency, is empathy. I think that is such a key factor to not only lead the nation, but lead the world, to really feel for people, whether you're a Democrat, whether you're Republican, white, black, Christian, Jew, Muslim. I think empathy is that key factor that is needed. And I think from Joe Biden's, history within the Senate, within the vice presidency, and just him as personally, I think that is one thing that he really does exude.
Right. So let me stop you for a second. As we can see at this moment, the oath taking has begun.
President of the United States, and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend.
Preserve, protect, and defend.
The Constitution of the United States.
The Constitution of the United States.
So help you God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. President.
Joseph R. Biden is sworn in as the 46th President of the U.S. We are just seeing the visuals, the footage coming right from the U.S. Capitol, Washington D.C. And now we are going to listen to him as well. This is a historic moment for two reasons. One, we have seen the first woman vice president in the U.S. The second thing is it marks the end of Trump era. And that in itself is quite a dramatic shift from what we were seeing 10-15 days ago when U.S. Capitol was attacked. And at this moment, even this ceremony is quite unprecedented. You can look at the podium. Shortly, the 46th U.S. President, Joseph R. Biden, is going to address this event as well. But this is quite a significant moment, and we are going to continue to talk about it. We can see the audience members. Tarimzi Saab, I want you to resume where we left your remarks, sir. Tarimzi Saab, can you hear me? Right. Let me ask you, Jaspal Saab, do you expect improvement of relationships between the U.S. and Pakistan in coming days then?
I think that there are opportunities for the improvement.
Okay.
And we have to see how the trends will be going to shape. But I'm confident with the Biden administration, Pakistan will be in a better position to deal. Because the indicators were during the election campaign, when they pointed out, that he wanted to engage. He made a very good, statement on the Kashmir, and we have seen that he's very much worried. You can say cabinet member are worried that if this tension or deadlock between Pakistan, which started since the Pulwama, if it continues
between Pakistan and India,
if it continues, there are chances of more devastation or catastrophe in the region.
Right.
And definitely for the Americans' interest, this catastrophe is not in their interest. And then if you see that they are very much supportive. In this context, our foreign minister also dealt with personally with this, you can say, Biden as well. So we have to see how we try to catch this opportunity.
Right. Viewers, this was today's program. The transmission continues, but at this moment we are going to conclude. The U.S. President has started speaking. Take care.
My fellow Americans, this is America's day. This is democracy's day. A day of history and hope, of renewal and resolve. Through a crucible for the ages, America has been tested anew, and America has risen to the challenge.